Every day. Time no day, so every day. If you see what happens.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to my very last episode of Home Notes. Today, I am joined by a very special guest. I've known him since 2020. We've worked together a couple of times, and he's a very deep thinker. He's none other than Qudus Onikeku. Kudus, hello,
Hi,
welcome.
how are you?
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm good. Lagos is hot and it's the Easter weekend and there's a lot
Yeah,
happening. A lot.
I can imagine. Okay. Can you introduce yourself just briefly for to the viewers?
Yeah, my name is Qudus Onikeku and I wear different arts and I'm a dancer. That one never changed. I'm a choreographer. I am the artistic director and the co-founder for the Qudance Centre here in Lagos. And currently a for John Randle Centre for Yoruba Culture and History. And I'm an artist. That's very important.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. And congrats to you on the launch of your new building for the Q Dance School. I know that's coming up soon. Congrats to you, to Haji, to the Q Dance team. Congrats to you on being the center director at Randle Centre for Yoruba Culture and History. And I feel like this is the perfect time to interview you because you've had very big moments in your life. So I want to go back to the beginning and chat your
Mm.
practice as a dancer. How did it begin and where did it take you?
I think I might sound a bit cliche, like many other dancers who tell you they started dancing from when they were kids.
Mm,
And I think that's the same for me as well. I recognize that I've always, had this, talent and passion for dancing. I remember when we were kids, we go to kids' parties, and I always bring home the prize. And but I think really when it started becoming something that I'm aware of, it didn't even start with dance. It started with acrobatics.
okay.
So it was inter sport. I think I was around 5 years old or six at that time, and I
Mm,
saw someone in the school, one student from another school came and did a flip, and that was like a kind of like a trigger for me. And that very moment, somebody doing something like that in my own space of truth, I thought, okay, I should be able to do that too, and I started learning it by myself, and eventually I was able to do it. So I just started producing, variations and multiple flips. That was the only thing I saw. So just accumulating the numbers. And then when I got to high school, um, I entered high school. I think I was age 10. Then I met a bunch of other crazy people like myself who
mhm.
new styles every day, new one, another one. I just learned from somewhere. Don't forget there was no internet then, so you always
Yeah.
get whatever you can get from whoever is in your own space of truth, really. And I think it was when we were doing those, acrobatic. It was not even a club. It was just at the end of the school or during break time. We just don't do any other thing. We just gather and just flip. That's all. And then the president of the Cultural and Dramatic Club in my school then wanted to do a production, and they came to seek those of us who would be doing acrobatics if we could be in that production. And that's really how I got, my first interest in dance was. It was not because of dance. If they said they were looking for dancers, I don't think I would have gone. But because
Mm,
they were looking for acrobats, that's why I went. And but when I got there, I knew I was only lying to myself. I knew I've always been a good dancer and interested in dance. And that's how it all started in high school. I think I was age 13 at that time. So the very first production I did when I was on stage, I was 13 years old. But I was in SS1, but I was a science student. Maybe that was why I didn't want to go to dance class. I was like, scientists don't dance, so why should I be doing this? And gradually, the interest started growing. I grew very fast in that club. I became the dance captain in less than a year. And I kind of like knew that there was something, there was really strong connection that I had with dance. So when I left high school, I automatically knew that that was it. I'm not going to continue as a science student. I want to go back and see if I can enter into art one way or the other.
Wow.
And yeah, that's how the whole journey started, because I already made a wrong decision of being a science student. So now I couldn't continue in the traditional arts. You know, you have to have your A's in your art, in your literature, to study art in this country.
Yeah.
So I knew at that very moment that I needed to figure something out for myself, that I need to design for myself, not what the institutions or the system has designed, which in many ways really helped me to become the artist that I am today. If I've gone to art school or dance school since the beginning, I think I would have been completely messed up. So I'm happy that I didn't. I didn't actually.
Yeah. And then how did that kind of translate to you? First of all, I didn't know this part. I knew about the acrobats, but then I'm like, this is very interesting from high school. I did not know you were a science student, and I feel like if people see you now, nobody will ever guess unless they knew you then that you
Yeah.
you were a science student. But then how did that kind of get you, or how did you move from that to going to France? Working with
So
students.
because of are you done with your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. So because of the necessity to chart out my own education, if I would
Mm-hmm.
call it that way,
Yeah.
because I wasn't going to any university deliberately, not because I couldn't, but I just didn't want to. Then I started looking for my own space where I can add more knowledge, especially to my own personal interest, which is mostly dance at that time. Then there were no many spaces. Don't forget again. I always try to remind people there was no internet at this time.
Mm,
there was no Google search. There was no YouTube. So
yeah.
you have to physically go and look for spaces where you can get resources. And I remember that I got selected to be part of the Lagos State Council for Art and Culture at
Mm,
age 17, which is not what you do at age 17 normally.
mm,
Then because of course, because it was a government thing, it was not really what I really wanted, but there was something good about it, because they are like archive themselves. They all the traditional forms, all the Eyo songs, all the music, all the traditional dances, they are like custodian of those things. So in 7 months that I stayed there, I learned a lot of traditional dances there. And but at the same time, I knew it was not all that rigorous enough for what
mm,
I was looking for. So
yeah.
while I was working there, then I joined another group called the Gong Beat, which is Isioma Williams. So with Isioma Williams, I would go to work in the morning. 4 p.m. I would go to Isioma Williams, the National Theatre. Then I couldn't last more than 7 months at the art council. I didn't even resign. I just didn't show up anymore. It's like, this one is not for me. I'm sorry. Everybody else was like 30, 35 at that time. People, art council is where you go when you finish your career as a dancer, just where looking for a place to relax.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, 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 I can't do this anymore. So I just stopped going there. Then I started going to the French Cultural Center,
Mm,
mostly because they had a library where I could watch videos from France, mostly of dance, of circus, of theater, documentaries, and also they have access to books, and also
mm,
sometimes space when I want to rehearse. So I would wake up like I was going to work every day, go to this library, and I would just be there the whole day sometimes. Or sometimes when I have rehearsals at National Theatre, I will go to my rehearsals from there. So
mm,
those were like my spaces of resource where I was, resuscitating myself as an artist.
mm,
And the good thing about the French Cultural Center at that time was that they kept inviting different choreographers from France to teach workshops. So
okay.
because I was always going there, I was always aware of when there's another workshop. So I was taking a lot of workshops. And I think it was a particular artist that came um, in 2003, yes, called Hedi Malem. Hedi Malem is a Franco-Algerian choreographer who's based in Toulouse. And when he came for his workshop, I was very excited, and I was part of that workshop. Then little did I know that it was actually also like an audition. So after the workshop was over, a few things happened around that time anyway, because after 4 years of doing this normal, trying to figure things out for yourself, I decided to eventually go to University of Lagos. But then I don't forget I still had only my science credentials.
Yeah.
But there was a lecturer then, I think his name is Tunji Shotimiri, he's still around now, who actually told me that I shouldn't worry, that I should find my way into studying whatever. So I decided to study mathematics and statistics. So I went for JAMB. I was in the merit list. I got my admission into, to study mathematics and statistics.
Yeah.
And then he promised me that he will help me do the transfer while I'm already in the system. So that was the only reason I took school seriously again.
Yeah.
So at that very time when Hedi Malem came from France, I now had two offers in 2004. I had the offer for the university, and I have the offer for the contract to go to France. So I was like, oh my God, what do I do? I mean, now, of course, for every Nigerian, I'm like, really? You were thinking about it? But I actually was. I was really confused. I'm like, oh God, which one should I go for? I was asking questions to everybody, every elder around. Everybody said to me, just pray about it and you'll figure it out. And I did figure it out eventually by myself. Even my dad didn't decide for me. I decided to go for the contract.
Yeah.
Now, the good thing about that admission was that it now forced me to negotiate alongside that contract that while I'm in France, will you help me to facilitate my studying? Because now, if I'm not taking this one, then I have to do my studies in France.
Yeah.
So that's how eventually he promised that, don't worry, let's go on tour. Let's see if this piece we are creating is going to be successful. If it is successful, you'll get to see different spaces, you will see different schools, you will decide eventually what you want to do, which precisely was what happened. After 2 years of touring that work, then eventually I decided to go to a circus art school in France, where they didn't ask me if I was a science student or a commercial student.
Yeah.
And the only thing that got me into that school was audition, was what you can do. And that for me was when I started realizing that there was something wrong with our educational system in Nigeria. And I'm really invested in doing whatever I can to make sure that those like me who have my kind of situation don't just end up being on the streets because there was no space for them in our educational system.
Wow. That's very interesting. Let me just ask one quick question. The French Cultural Center, where was it located in?
It was
Where's the site
located
located?
on. It was located on. What's it called then? Alfred Ruane. Alfred Ruane is opposite Ikoyi Hotel, former Ikoyi Hotel,
Okay.
which is now Movenpick, I think. And it
Okay.
was just directly opposite. So if you see that building now, there is an abandoned space, and beside it there is Zenith Bank. That Zenith Bank used to be where the stage was, and that abandoned space used to be where the Alliance Francaise was, which was where the library was. So
Okay.
I still pass in front of it every day now on my way home, and I still remember.
Yeah. Oh wow.
That's
Okay.
21 years back now.
That's very interesting. Just hearing of all the, when you talk about Lagos Council for Arts and Culture and all this, I'm like, oh, okay, this is very interesting. This is what was going on. Okay. But then, so now you're in France and you're now in this school through your audition, and how long were you there for? And kind of from there, what sort of spaces did you create? Because I know now some of the things that you've done, but I know that they did not start.
Yeah. So being in France was a very eye-opening because while I was touring with the company, it was a special kind of arrangement. So you don't get to see reality when you're just visiting and just coming back and going back. So I was always moving back and forth. I never lived in France. Maybe I will go for 3 months. I'll be on tour. Then I come back to Nigeria. Then another 3 months later, I'm back again. So that was how I was surviving for almost 3 years until I decided to school there. So schooling there, of course, opened my eyes to a lot of realities. And as at that time, I think my mind as an artist, I'm talking about age 22, 23, thereabout, my mind started really becoming a bit more matured as what it means to be an artist, what um, vocation you have, and also volition you have as well, what responsibility is upon you as an artist, whether you get scholarship to study in France or not, whether somebody took care of you as an artist or not.
Yeah.
When you become an artist, you have a certain kind of responsibility, and I realized, I started realizing the disbalance between things, the ways at which in my school was an international school, but in everything, in the teaching about the history of art, in the teaching about the history of dance, in the teaching about what is happening in the world, we never been mentioned. Like, we were never mentioned at all. And I was coming from a space, again, after going to art council, seeing all of this amazing stuff, reading so much about Ogunde, Drola Dipo, Fela Kuti, Wale Soyinka, Chinua Achebe, all these amazing people. They never showed up at all. And I kind of like say, you know what, it's okay, it's fair enough. It's their country. Not them now. They'll teach me in French as well. There was no So I started seeing the kind of a soft power that was happening. How we're being already conditioned to organize or to situate ourselves as any kind of artist in the world. So I realized that for me as a thinker, and for me as somebody who is interested in doing something really grand and really different, I actually saw that as a plus. I saw the fact that the world was not focusing on that space as something I can now do as my own original thing. Like, okay, everybody else is doing this. Everybody else is taking their reference points from this same pot. No wonder all our works are looking alike all over the world. You go to Japan, you go to USA, you go to Germany, you go to France. There's very little difference. So I saw that as my own secret pot. I said, okay, I'm going to understand everything you're teaching me. I'll read all your Picasso. I'll read all your Mozart. I'll read everything you want to tell me about history of art, your art. I would say, okay, I understand it. Also, because I have other reference points, I also understand where the people you are mentioning, where they took their inspirations from, but they never mentioned them.
Yeah.
So all the things Picasso stole, all the stuff Matisse, all those kind of they are big names. All the things they stole from Congo, from the one African tradition or the other, the Brecht theater, the epic theater, all of those things. I kind of started understanding my own positionality within their own narratives, but they don't know, because most of their what do you call them? Their geniuses. They are thieves mostly, who just doesn't give reference to where they take or they borrow things from. So I started to say, okay, now I found it. I'm going to do exactly what Picasso did. Exactly. Only that I'll give reference to Yoruba people who I am taking the most of my inspiration from. So that was how I started situating myself, even while I was in France, while I was in school. I was now very much interested in buying books on Amazon about Yoruba culture, Yoruba philosophy, Yoruba aesthetics, Yoruba worldview. I was really intentional. That was where, actually, it was while I was in France that I started becoming Yoruba.
Yeah, I get that. That's very relatable. I think sometimes living in Lagos, Misha, you take it for granted. Everybody's here. Should be well. We know now. We know ourselves. The moment you don't have that, it's like, okay, who am I? Like, and not just who am I, like, as if I don't know where my parents are coming from, but more like, how does that affect the way that I reorient myself in the world? That kind of thing. And then I want to go to Afropolis now, but did you also create that while you were in France? Afropolis, the online performance space.
So Afropolis is, again, I think from the moment I started that journey, the very first thing I did while I was in school, one summer break, I organized a tour. So as at this time, as at this time, you can already imagine, I was already becoming rebellious against the French Cultural Center itself. I was already becoming rebellious. I was, because now I live in France. So all the bamboozle, all the magic is gone. all the all the pizzazz and razzmatazz is gone. Now I see reality
Yeah.
for what it is, and I started thinking now, like, wow. So we were actually doing something very bad to ourselves when we started making work solely to be performed in the French Cultural Center. And we claimed that there was a contemporary dance practice in Nigeria. No, there wasn't. We were only being packaged for French people, French expatriates, French market, and French understanding of dance.
Yeah.
So because they were the only one paying for it, then our aesthetic started looking so much like people who were just interested in going to France.
Okay. Okay.
And I said, that was bad. That's wrong. And I started retracing my own steps. And I said, okay, what will it look like? Why are people, number one, not interested in contemporary dance? And number two, who say they are not interested in contemporary dance? Have we even shown them?
Yeah.
Have we even brought it to them? Because as at that time at the French Cultural Center, only our family and friends are the Nigerians there. I can count how many non-family and non-friends Nigerians who is not connected to French people in any way just stumble upon contemporary dance at the French Cultural Center. It was almost impossible.
Yeah.
So I started looking at my own practice, and the first thing that I started wanting to do was, I'm not even going to change anything in my dance. Stop whatever you've been building. Stop at this very moment. Now start looking for the audience. Where are the audience? Who is the audience? Why are they not coming? Where will you find them? This was the question. So in 2006, I did my very first project around the continent called "Do We Need Coca-Cola to Dance?" That was the title of the piece. Now, it wasn't even a piece. Again, rebellious. I said to myself, we're going to do a tour. Because at that time, Nigeria was not it was like that everywhere in the continent. Everywhere all over Africa, it was like that. It was the French people that was controlling dance. So I said, I'm going to do a tour around the continent. And I'm going to not perform at French cultural centers. And the first thing that comes to mind was that, oh shit, then where are you going to perform? You're going to find yourself on the streets.
Yeah.
And the beginning, it was scary. Then I said, okay, why not? Why not actually? Why not go perform on the street, in the marketplaces, mechanic shops, at the beach, university compounds? Why don't you do that? And now make it actually grand by turning it into a tour. So I did Lagos, Cairo, Johannesburg, Maputo, Nairobi, and Yaoundé in Cameroon. So I did 6 cities in 6 countries around the continent, in every region of the continent: west, north, south, east, and central.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see the people's reaction to what we do. We just I gathered it myself, one other girl from my school, a photographer, a sound artist, and a videographer. So 5 of us, we went on this 4-week tour. That was the only break I had for summer break. And I just did a tour. I just did a tour of the continent for that summer break. I got back. So what I did was I separated them into 3 different spaces. I wanted to go to a poor neighborhood. I wanted to go to a rich neighborhood. And I wanted to go to a school, or at least an educational space. And it was very ethnographic the way I was doing the performances. So the performances itself is very much more improvised, even though we created the beginning and the end. But what happens in between was very improvised. So, and I came back realizing one thing. Number one, if you want to go back to the continent, so now you can already imagine I'm already preparing my return after school.
Yeah.
So if you want to go back, you need to do one thing for yourself. You need to understand the audience, and you need to understand the market. You need to understand the space. So I understood that if you want people that has money to pay for what you do, but I noticed they're very uninterested, uninteresting, and also they don't have energy. They're not proactive.
Yeah.
But they have money. They'll pay for your stuff. go to the rich places. If you want vitality, vivacity, and exciting engagement after your every proposition, after every artistic proposition,
Yeah.
go and work for people in the poor neighborhood. They don't have the money to pay you, but they have the numbers
Mm-hmm.
and they have the curiosity, and they are very, very intelligent in the way they engage performance.
Yeah.
Universities, forget them.
I was not expecting that. Okay.
Forget them. They have lost their curiosity. They only do things because their lecturer was going to give them a mark. It's very transactional. When their lecturer tells them to go to something, it's because they're expecting something or because they are avoiding being punished. So I wasn't interested in that kind of audience at all. I'm interested in people that are curious. So I realized that I needed to do things for the poor neighborhoods because this is where I find my joy. I find energy. I find reciprocity and call and response.
Yeah.
And and because when we get to some cities, you will just see 500 kids, a lot of adults. Because what we do is that when you go there, we don't advertise. We don't tell anybody we're coming. We only tell the owner of the space. We go there like a day before. We beg the owner of the space. We'll go and do recce. And on the day of the recce, we'll tell the owners we're coming back tomorrow. So will you allow us to come here? Whatever they say, we negotiate, blah, blah, blah. We agree. Okay, tomorrow, 2 o'clock, we'll be here. 1:30, we will be there already, setting up our sound, our rehearsal stuff, stretching, camera guy. So that is the invitation. We don't even tell people that we're coming. So once you see that, and things start to organically come together. So in those poor neighborhoods, in Madare, in Kenya, in Maputo, in Lagos, in Cairo, downtown Cairo, you just see the interest. Like the level of interest it always amazes me. Then number 2 is after the show, they don't go. They don't leave us. They're like, no, you have to explain what all of this is about. The performance will be 30 minutes and we'll be there for another 3 hours talking.
Yeah.
So I found it very, very engaging, very exciting. So that was already in my left hand. So when I left school, I tried to relocate, but it didn't work in 2009 because mentally I couldn't cope. I just had to run away from Lagos. So when I went back to France, I started my practice. Well, my practice started looking very much like very institutional, very, for theater spaces. I was, after 3 works, I was like up there, like top artist in France. But I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't completely fulfilled about what I really wanted to do, especially after I'd done that research.
Yeah.
I couldn't convince myself that France was the space. I couldn't. I knew I needed to leave, Then, but before leaving, I started something in Paris that I called Afro-Parisian Network. Afro-Parisian Network was my first realization that, okay, there's something called the diaspora. I have never been a part of it. I've just been in my own bubble all this time.
Yeah.
I don't even know the reality. I didn't know France was like that to some people.
Yeah. Okay.
All my fantasy is only artistic. I was only evolving within the artistic circuit.
Yeah.
I'll be in big theaters, I'll get funding, I get support. I was okay.
Wow.
I was fine. But I realized at some point that, all of that is happening to you and very few other people alone. All the other millions of Africans in France, no, they're not having it good.
Yeah.
That was how again, in terms of responsibility, to whom much is given, right? Much is expected. So when I realized how favored and how privileged I am in France, I said, no, I have to do something with this privilege. I cannot just take it like that.
Yeah.
So I started in my own crazy way. I started organizing the diaspora in Paris. The irony is that I think Paris is one of the biggest diaspora gathering space because Africa is there. The Caribbean is there. I don't know. People that were born in France is there. Black Americans are there. Everybody has a history because it's a connecting point. So I now designed something that is Parisian, but mostly talking to the African Parisians.
Mm.
Even though I had to coin it in a very clever way that it's not just about Africans,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
France, no, France is another level when it comes to control.
Yeah.
When it comes to control, is
Mm.
another level. So I now wanted to, because all of this, don't forget, I don't understand. I wanted to understand. That was how I did a preparation network. It was for me to understand what's going on. So when I started doing those gatherings, I will now invite artist friend of mine, poets, dancers, DJs, musicians, entrepreneurs, philosophers, teachers, whatever,
Yeah.
filmmakers. Now I will gather them. So they are like my real Afro-Parisian, right?
Mm.
But I will also make it open to other people who are not any of these things, because they are my real audience that I'm looking for.
Mm.
So they will come. We will now gather together. We will not gather as artists. We will gather as Africans and Parisians
Mm.
who have things to talk about.
Yeah.
In the middle of the talks, I will be activating my friends who is a poet, who is a musician. We watch a short film. We see that short performance. But it was not happening in a theater. It was happening at the cafe, or it was happening in a co-creation space. So
Okay.
I was making sure that I was undoing all those codes of normal art spaces, which are already alienate the diaspora.
Yeah. Okay.
So I took art, just like I did for dance, for doing it color to dance. I
Mm-hmm.
took it away from its normal space. I now use it for almost like a non-art outcome.
Mm.
So how do you use art for non-art, problems?
Yeah.
And first edition, third edition, second edition, third edition, fourth edition, people were ecstatic about these gatherings.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I started seeing the power of community. I was like, never. All my work, my exile is in my head, still
Yeah.
life, Kaddish. I was just in my own space, doing my own mental, having my own mental trips all by myself
Yeah.
without realizing what was around me. And unfortunately, I've done maybe about 6 editions of Afro-Parisian Network when I decided to move back to Nigeria. So I saw how hard it was on the community, because there was no other,
Yeah.
thing like that. So I think after then, of course, we've inspired enough people, and I think I started seeing a lot of artistic interventions like that.
Yeah.
So when I got back to Nigeria and we started QDance, in fact, before we started QDance Center, the very first event we organized in Lagos was called Counterpoint, and Counterpoint was a direct mimic of Afro-Parisian network. But this time around, there's no diaspora. So I started thinking, doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense in Lagos.
Mm.
So you can now understand how immediately I started having the capacity, gathering the diaspora in Lagos became a fantasy. It became
Yeah.
something I was interested in, really, really
Yeah.
interested in. And I think all my different experiments is what eventually now culminated into Afropolis.
It's so interesting because I remember, for those who know or follow my Instagram, my first curatorial project was hosted on Afropolis. And I remember when I was that online performance space before I come to the physical aspect of it. This one is really shiny. This one is really shining in
I
my
can, I can see it.
face. um, but I remember just thinking, oh, I'm working with museums, I'm working with Nigerian cultural heritage. I'm in Canada, and I'm looking for a space that is fresh and critical enough for me to explore this thing. Um, but it's outside of the museums, like it's outside of that institutionalized, or
Mm.
like those kind of very very traditional art institutions. And then I found Afropolis, and I was like, something like this. In fact, when I was saying it to my supervisor that this is the kind of space I want to have, this kind of project, I was like, I couldn't conceive that Afropolis existed. So actually finding it, it was not like, oh, okay, there's a
Yeah.
place like this, and that just like blew my mind. So that's what I was wondering about, the intention, like how did this come to be, and even going from the Afro Parisian network to having this then online space where everyone, like what Afropolis is now. I guess I mean I wanted to ask about the intention, but I guess you've already started talking about it. Is there more to add with that?
No, so when Afropolis started, we used to organize dance gatherings.
Mm-hmm.
So dance gatherings started in 2017, 2018, 2019. Then the fourth edition was going to happen in Lagos. And every edition always have a theme. You know, the first one was movement. The second one was body and memory. The third one was Afro space time. And the fourth one was going to be this is the end, the future is black. And one thing you will notice about when I moved back to Nigeria, something shifted in my artistic practice. I was now intentionally becoming very, very communal, even in my creative process.
Yeah.
Very, very communal. So I started deliberately creating space for the outsiders inside of my own practice. So when they come in, they don't actually know that I'm actually still in my own practice.
Yeah.
But I created space for them to also find their own joy inside of my own practice. And so when we did a series of dance gatherings, and then everything has always been research, Afro space time, body and memory. You can see the connection between those two and reincarnation. And and when it was now time for us to do the last, not the last, but the one that eventually became the last edition, that was when COVID struck. You know, that was when COVID struck.
Yeah.
And and I was like, but all your work, all your premonition, you know, there's a prophetic thing about my work. I'm you know, there's this artistic vision that is almost like a premonition, like foretelling something to come. And so when you say to yourself in 2019 that the theme of Dance Garden 2020 will be this is the end, the future is black, and you yourself wrote it that the blackness I'm talking about is not about race or color. It's about dark, it's about doom, it's about gray, right? Which means there's something that we will not be able to see about the future because it's going to surpass anybody's capacity for understanding what's coming. So COVID came in March. Dance Garden was supposed to happen in April. We bought tickets, we paid for hotels. Many people have, you know, bought their flight ticket and all of that. Then, boom, the world shut down. It didn't meet me in shock. It didn't meet me in surprise. I wasn't surprised. So at that time, almost every festival that was slated for March, April, May, cancel. And I said to myself, no, we're not going to cancel it. People thought I was crazy. I said, no, we're not going to cancel it. Give me some time. Let me think. And I started thinking and said, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to bring the diaspora together in an unprecedented way by already define all the mechanisms and all the tools that whiteness has put on the way for our gathering, for our coming together. The tools, sometimes they call a visa, sometimes they call passport, sometimes they call expensive, crazy expensive flight tickets. You know? So I'm saying, how can we actually come up with a practice or an experiment to show that maybe there are other spaces of power. Maybe there are other spaces where liberation is still possible. Maybe this current version of ending, which we have experienced many of it, you know, from colonization to slavery to apartheid, we've experienced series of endings. So the world is not just ending for the first time for us. In Nigeria, the world has ended since the 60s, since the 70s, it has ended. Now, we are the ones who have mastered how to survive the end of the world, who have understood that at the end of the world is not the end. There's something behind it because we've been there all this while. When they say Second World War, Third World War, First World War, we were not even there. Where were we? We were behind the world when all of those things were happening. So Why should we be worried now that the world is shutting down? Our world had shut down long ago, and we never died. So how do we then bring our ways, our modes of surviving? How do we bring it to the forefront now as a proposition for a possible way out or a possible way of staying with the trouble?
Staying with the trouble.
So, and I started thinking, I said, okay, we didn't know any technology. Zoom, that was the first time I got on Zoom. And me and my guys said, let's figure out what is this Zoom thing. We started saying, okay, let's use that. I wrote an email to all the people that had been to Nigeria for dance gathering and those who were supposed to come that year. I told them the idea. What if we gather, we have a residency on Zoom for 1 month. And at the end of that creative residency, collaborative residency, collaborating across continents, at the end of it, we do a performance live where all of us tune in and we invite all our friends to come and watch it. And that will be Dance Gathering 2020. And what we did was phenomenal. We gathered over 135 artists from about 60 different cities during that period. And we couldn't have even achieved that during COVID, in person. We couldn't. So we started that collaboration. Every Saturday we'll come, we'll think of ideas. Everybody will go back during the week. They would work on their different projects. They'll come again and bring it together. So we created different groups. So you remember the Zoom, you can do group, whatever. So we'll put different people in different groups, and then there will be breakout sessions. People will continue, will come back again. So it was very collaborative, very, very new. Nobody knew what it was. And what came out of it was 5 hours long worth of content. Crazy collaboration, crazy titles, crazy experiments, People will record themselves, they send it to somebody, they will edit it together. So at the end, none of the artists was as seeing what everybody else was doing. So that day, I think it was April 19, 2020, when we all then gather for a YouTube live. I remember it was during lockdown. We never had any internet that can do live. So we had to figure all of this thing out from Lagos here. We figured it out. My guy, Obajo, was almost arrested because where he went to find internet in one church that does live streaming, they've closed the estate, so he had to jump the gate. They caught him. He said, guys, wait, let me just go live. Once I go live, you can arrest me. It was a guerrilla kind of thing. We should have made it happen. And we screened it 2 days. I think it was 18 and 19 of April. Big buzz. 10,000 people tuned in from all over the world.
Wow.
Big buzz after that. Now everybody started asking, we heard about what happened. It was too late. I couldn't see it. Where can we watch it? Where can we watch it? And as at that time, I was already doing my research at University of Florida about this big tech and IP. So I said to myself, I'm not going to leave my video on YouTube. Let's figure a way to create our own digital cultural center. That was the whole crazy idea. Like, how can you have a digital cultural center? It's not a website. It's not an archive. It's an event space. It's a library. It's a meeting space. That was all we do. That's all we do in cultural center. We meet each other there. We have fun. We talk. We watch performances. We go to libraries. So I just started conceptualizing the website. I built Afropolis by myself from 0 to 100. I had time. COVID. During COVID, everybody had time. That was what I did with my own time. I was building Afropolis. Every day I wake up, research. Okay, how can I do this? How can I do that? What do I do here? And I brought it up in less than 1 month after Afropolis. It was already live.
Wow.
It was already live. Then I was just, perfecting it, making it better. And eventually, so 2021, it just occurred to me that was the end of Dance Gathering. Now, let's start experimenting with Afropolis. So Afropolis first started as a digital Culture Center, as a digital meeting space, gathering space.
Yeah.
Then at the middle of the idea was the whole idea of networking. So networking can happen in a distributed way where everybody just enter. Then it can also be decentralized where all of those people that just enter started finding themselves one way or the other. It doesn't have to do it with me anymore.
Yeah.
Or then the third one is centralized, where I, the owner of the platform, will then send a message to everybody that, hey guys, we are gathering in Barcelona in 2021. Are you interested in coming? Okay, this is what it takes. This is how much. This is where we are gathering. This is the date. This is what we are trying to do. This is the theme. So if you are interested, let's meet there. So that's how Afropolis then become a new way of organizing
Yeah.
through both distributed, decentralized, and centralized network. So that's precisely what Afropolis every year is actually an outcome. It's not where we started. It is the outcome of all the gatherings that happened, both virtually and physically.
That's very interesting. I like the term digital cultural center because I feel like even when I first found Afropolis, some people would ask me in Vancouver, "Oh, so what is this place?" I'll say, "It's like an online, it's like an online performance. It's like, and I don't know. I was like, what will I use to describe this? But when you go on there and you see, you have artist works, you have like archives, you have different like documentation of events that have happened, of meetings that have happened, of workshops that have happened. I'm like, this is a transformational kind of setting, and to see that, just hearing your process now, how it came to be, I'm like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. And I feel like in a sense it's a very nice um strategy and starting point to produce many outcomes, because now the outcomes are like coming and people are like, oh, fixated on this, but then you have this, what will I call it, network engine that is like behind that. So
Yeah.
wow, that's phenomenal. Not even that's a very nice story. But I also I really wanted to ask you what motivated your coming back, but before that, I want to ask about the Qdance Center started when you came back, right? Okay, so let me
Yeah.
start from you coming back. I know you kind of talked briefly about it, but and also the Guardian article that said that you had 2 years left of your grant money and you just give them back and then you came back. And I know we've talked about exile and return, and you mentioned my exile is in my head, like things like that. So what made that time a good time to
To
return?
come back. Many things happened, I think, coincidentally. If I think back now, um, you see, the condition of exile is such a it's I was so fascinated about that state because I never considered myself a migrant. I never considered myself somebody who lives in France, and I never considered myself French in any way. But at the same time, I didn't know what I consider myself as because I got all the support that I needed really for my work in France. All the support I needed, like mentally, physically, financially, also in terms of space, allocation,
Yeah.
access, and also engagement. I was engaging with artists from Belgium, from France, from UK, like engaging. Like I had a very healthy artistic community around my work,
Yeah.
or at least close to my space, my mental space. So I do not see exile in that sense as a kind of a loss or as something to grieve over. No, I was actually having fun. I was enjoying myself while I was doing
Yeah.
all of that. But so I was getting myself busy a lot. I was busy. I was traveling a lot. But I think my coming for vacation in 2012, no, in 2013, in December. This is a time where I've been almost everywhere in the world. I've taught in the United States, I've been to Malaysia, I've been to Japan, I've been to all over Europe. I've done African tour like twice. I've been everywhere. I've been busy, 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 busy. So coming back to Nigeria, almost like this IJGB thing that happened in December this year.
Yeah.
I just came back for December break. And I started meeting a lot of young people like myself who were like, oh, I studied in UK, I'm back, I'm coming back, I'm in US, I'm coming back, I'm in South Africa, I'm coming back. I'm like, okay, wow, everybody's coming back to Nigeria now. And this was also the beginning of the rise of Afrobeat, you know?
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
started feeling the shift. I started feeling that something is about to happen from Nigeria.
Yeah.
And I think the next stage, next step, next level for my work, I think I need to be physically in Nigeria, not just going for holidays or just, it's until I went to live in France that I saw.
Yeah.
So I wanted to say, you know what, now I live here and I want to be part of this new energy that I'm feeling. I'm feeling something is coming and I really want to be part of that. Because at that time, I started realizing that my work in France got to a glass ceiling because I was already named the new choreographic talent in France. It's an annual prize they give to artists in France, all artists in France. And I was already at Avignon Festival, which is like the biggest festival in France, as one of the artists invited. So I'm like, so what next? Like, it's boring afterwards. So I wanted more challenge.
Yeah.
In order to get the flow going again, I needed to increase the level of challenge. Because then I had 3 years funding, like they'll just fund you 3 years ahead, which is a good thing for an artist. But I think at the same time, it's a space an artist should never get to, where you now start seeing yourself as a success. Artists should never be a success because it will kill something inside of you. There must always be something that you're challenging, that you're fighting for, that you're fighting against, that you're aiming towards, that keeps you waking up every day and energized and excited. And so I saw the level of challenge in Nigeria was higher than what I control. In France, the level of challenge was lower than what I control. So I was like, I needed more. So coming to Nigeria was the more for me. No funding was waiting for me. No space, no audience, no artists, no anything. All the things I've built in France, I knew I was going to restart from zero when I come back here. So I said, let's see, let's take it. Let's take it. And I'm happy I did, really. Because in about 2 years in already, I already saw that this was the best decision you've ever made. This was the best decision to come back here and be part of this struggle and be part of this mess, this city that no one can understand, this situation which is very, very hopeless, this condition of being an artist without anybody recognizing what it means to be an artist, this situation where you are awakened every day by incredible story of corruption. All of this was for me where I say, you know what, because as I say, I started being interested a lot in using my art for other purposes other than just creating and performing and touring. I was interested in more challenges, like how can I bring it into actual problems, into actual things. And I'm composing real problem. I'm choreographing real problems, not just exile, fantasy, romantic ideas, which is okay. I mean, I studied that shit. I'm very good at it. So it's not like I don't like it. But you see the limit of it when you are in front of Bariga, when you're in Oro, when you are, there's no light, when your dancer calls you that my wife's about to die because we need money for CS. Well, now this is concrete stuff. You're like, okay, how do you choreograph your way into this? And as an artist, really, nothing could have given me more joy than that. It elevated my practice in an incredible way.
And so maybe this is a good segue to the QDance Center and the QDance School and how that started for you. Coming back and now beginning to choreograph the problems that were around and not just choosing to be real rather than art for art's sake. Maybe we should say it like that. So how did that start? QDance Center.
Yeah. So like I said, the interest was looking for real problems that dance can respond to. I didn't say solve. I'm not. I will never pretend that I'm in the business of solving problems. That's not the work of an artist. But play with. That's what we do as artists. We play with problems, we engage, we experiment. So what I was looking for, I realized that as an artist, if you look at my library, you will see all sorts of books in my library, because each time I'm going into a new subject matter, I go and research around that subject matter. The more I understand about it, then the more I can compose them into a beautiful dance, no matter what the subject matter is. So, and I say, so look at Nigeria very clearly. Look at the society. Study it. What are these visible things that you can see? It might be visible to you, and maybe it's not visible to many other people. Because I've never believed in traditional ways of solving problems. I've never believed in it. I've never voted. I've never had a voter's card anywhere in the world, because I never believe that's where it's gonna come from. I can't. Some people. I'm not saying people should stop voting. Oh, please. I'm not saying that. But me, I feel like I could be useful in other ways than just being a regular, voting, listening to people's argument and deciding, okay, I'll vote for this one, I'll not vote for that one. And vote and then go and sleep another 4 years and then come out after 4 years and say, let me go and vote again. I never believe in that way of solutioning. I never see that as a way out or anything interesting. For me, I actually think it's an escapist way of engaging, where you don't want to engage, you do something significant that clears your own conscience, like at least I did something, and I don't want to be part of that. That's not why I'm an artist. I'm an artist because I am a visionary, and I want to lead. I want to point, not lead. I want to point at a particular direction and say, guys, see that. And something's going to drop from that place. Just keep watching. And that, for me, I think is the role of an artist. And I need to be grounded enough and to be intuitive enough to be able to continue to get those inspiration and get those messages or visions and then turn them into artworks. So when I came, I realized that the problem of Nigeria has a young people problem. What I mean by that is 65% of our population are below 25, as at that time. I think it's still the same now. And and when I studied more, I realized that 80% of that number, now, don't let me even go to 80%. Let me first tell you what 65% of Nigerians mean. About 130 million Nigerians are young people. 130 million Nigerians is equals to about 8 to 10 different countries in West Africa. Because Nigeria is actually half of West Africa, and there are 16 countries in West Africa. Nigeria is equal to 15 other countries in terms of numbers. So if our youth are that many, imagine what they can do if they were being empowered. Because I now realize that 80% of that figure I gave you, they are either unemployed or underengaged. So that for me was a problem. I already saw it. I said, "Woo, wow." One day when these 130 million people decide to wake up and burn shit down, everything will be on the ground in 2 days. So I'm like, that's why I say Nigeria has a young people problem. And I think, I've said this thing in 2014 when I was starting Qudus Centre. 2020 NSES movement was a tip of an iceberg of what I was already seeing. Now, if these guys decide to get angry one day, there will be no more Nigeria. Like, it wouldn't exist anymore. If they decide, okay, bring all your soldiers, let's see how many people you can kill. Look at our numbers, look at your numbers. So I knew that I was interested in saying, okay, what can I do strictly for young people? Strictly. So, like I said, don't forget that I'm an artist. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not, I'm not looking for something fancy idea. No. I started saying that I want to bring my practice. So when I say my work was no longer about artwork, but now it's about an art practice. So I want that practice itself to have within it all the components of responding to a particular problem. At the same time, it's still a pure art movement. Pure. So I said to myself, okay, let's start Qudance Centre. It wasn't clear fully in my head, but I knew that I wanted to do something that is not strictly business, but at the same time, not strictly charity, because I do not believe in a welfarist situation. I was coming from that. I was coming from France, don't forget. I was coming from France where everything was available. And I'm in Nigeria where nothing was available. And I get to see the value of the two. There must be a balance between the two.
Yeah.
And I think none of them found the balance. Neither France nor Nigeria.
Yeah.
There must be something in between where you don't allow people to have free meal too much. At the same time, you don't let people pay for every meal. There's a problem in those two situations. Nigeria is one, France is the other one.
Yeah.
So I was already, again, my ideologies, my beliefs, I was turning all of that into a project. So we started gradually. We knew, of course, that we need to train. We knew that we need to find a way to get all the kids' attention from Instagram to something offline where it is much more sustainable. We knew that we want to work with only young people between below the ages of 26, only at that time. We knew certain things, and we just started programming them, putting them in different kind of programs. We started Madhouse. Madhouse was the very first one. It was in Madhouse that we trained people like Hermes that went to Big Brother eventually. We trained Josh Too Funny. We trained CEO Masterpiece. We trained Value Sunday Ozegbe. We trained Bello Crab. We trained a couple of them. And what we did was not just dancers. They were dancers, they were actors, they were comedians, they were rappers, they were singers, they were sound producers, they were actors, poets. And we just gathered them together. And MAD for me was music, acting, and dancing. So MAD House. And it was our very first project. And it was very successful. So once we did a couple of things like that, all our ideas then culminate into something we now eventually call the QDance Create. Create is community, research, art making, what's the T again? Talent development, and entrepreneurship. I said one E is for education. The other one is for entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship came later because we now realize that what we were trying to achieve was actually what already had a theme, a term called social enterprise. So we were actually a social enterprise whereby we're not doing charity work, we're actually doing business, but we don't share profit at the end of it. We turn it around again and turn it into new projects, into new ideas and new products.
Oh, wow. That's very interesting. And then I know you had another space, but I think let me talk about this new building now. What motivated this new building and the new building, its location, but then also what can people expect? Like what kind of spaces in the architectural plan were you intentional about?
What was clear to me was I think I've always because of course I was born in Lagos. And even when I lived outside Lagos, the kind of cities that really fascinated me in all my travels were cities that had similar temperament to Lagos. Sao Paulo, Tokyo, Johannesburg, New York. You know, these are the even Paris to a certain degree. These are London. These are the cities that really excite me because I think I love, and I think that is not because I was only born in Lagos. It was because I'm a movement artist, you know, and that kinetic movement or motion around people, a lot of people. I love choreographing a lot of people because of that. Because I see the energy of the collective of the group as something very interesting. So I started looking at how can you be actually in the middle of something like that. So we didn't plan it. This new building, the building just showed itself. We were not even looking to buy a building. It just showed. I don't know why it just came to us. And it was actually to our own, because don't forget, as at that time, we were actually living in the US because I was teaching at the University of Florida. So to our own situation at that time, it was actually quite cheap. So don't forget, we just bought it. We didn't buy it because of Qudus Centre. It came our way. We said, wow, a building like this in the middle of Lagos Island? Wow. I want to own that building. I just bought it. As at this time, we were still in the US. No serious plan to move back to Nigeria yet. Then, when the plan to move back to Nigeria started coming reality, I thought to Haji, I said, that is the space for Qudus Centre. And the building was fine. People were living inside when we bought it. They were going to maintain their rent to continue. But we had to send everybody out when the idea of Qudus Centre came. We had to evict everybody, 6 different tenants. And we then remodeled the whole thing. The money we spent on remodeling is way more than how much we bought the building. Because we were very intentional. One thing you would struggle to find in Lagos, especially in the middle of Lagos like this, is a building with this expanse of space without any pillar in the middle of it. You will not find it. So we have to break down all the pillars that is holding the building and then introduce new beams that are just coming like this. So it is these beams themselves that are holding the space together. In the middle, there is no pillar, nothing actually holding the space. And that was a real serious engineering work. So we had to be very intentional. I have to also explain, because don't forget that there's never been any dance center in Nigeria. So even the architecture, even the architects and the engineers, they've never built anything like that before in this country. So I had to keep explaining to them, no, you need to be very solid. A lot of people will be jumping on the rooftop. A lot of people will be dancing and stamping. So we need something that is mechanically and structurally very, very strong to withhold the kind of practice that we do. So currently, we have our restaurants at the ground floor, our offices at the ground floor as well. So at least those 2 spaces can make us continue keep dancing as long as we want upstairs. So then we also have a rooftop, which is something I've always been fascinated about. A rooftop in the middle of Lagos Island is a no-brainer. I love it. I love it myself. So if eventually the space is only available to us alone, to the dance company, it's something that we can sustain. But again, my practice is not about that anymore. I want to make sure that the dance community itself at large is benefiting from this center.
Yeah, it's true what you say, because I'm thinking of this building now, and I'm like, oh, the kind of possibilities for what it means for Lagos Island, because again, Lagos Island has its own history, part of it with the arts, and it's not as if the history is not there, but sometimes it can feel forgotten. And so having this building here, does it feel like some kind of revival, reintroduction, renewal? What's the English?
That's a very good point you made, which I forgot to mention actually. The reason why I'm fascinated about Lagos Island is precisely because of that. There is vibrancy, there's vibrant energy, there is commerce, there is history, and there is also culture. There's culture. This is Ayo. This is typical Lagos Island stuff, And tomorrow is actually Fanti Carnival. They've not done a Fanti in 10 years. This is the first one. And they've not done an Ayo for a while as well. I am suspecting there will be an Ayo this year. So Lagos Island, just like you said, things might feel dormant. But the moment it gets shaking again, everything comes back to life again. That's the amazing part of who we are. I think we can go 3 generations, even 10 generations without remembering. Then one generation will come and everything will rush back as if it never left. That's part of what is powerful about Yoruba culture. And I think Lagos Island is that space. And QDance Centre, in that very space, and the opening that we are doing on the 27th of April, or 26th of April, 26th and 27th actually, we are very deliberate about inviting everybody to come and see it. Because it's not really about QDance Centre. It's about QDance Centre reopening access to Lagos Island, which turned out to seem like a very dangerous place. And it was only dangerous because there was no access. So now we are reopening it. For example, the BBC, they came last week to film us. And when we finished the interview in the studio, then we continued working. Then I didn't realize that they were actually on the street with big cameras, with white people filming on the streets of Lagos Island. I'm like, if this building was not here, there's no way on earth you will have the audacity to do that. You will not be able to do it. So what we have done also is that we want to make it a citizen space more than a community center. A citizen space for me is that building becomes one of the citizens of Lagos Island. That building is in relationship with the area boys, is in relationship with the market women, is in relationship with the other historical spaces in Lagos Island, is in relationship with families, important families in Lagos Island, is in relationship with the cultural narratives, is in relationship with the history of that space, is in relationship with the vibrant culture and vibrant energy of young people in that space. So we are not, we don't say everything should happen at Qudus Center, no. But there's a relationship with other people that are doing other stuffs. And that for me is what I call a citizen space. Is how can we make sure, for example, there used to be a base at the wall of the QDance Center. So when we came, we had to negotiate with them. Say, see, we will not remove your base, but let us put down this fence, let us rebuild it. And once that is done, we will rebuild your base for you so that you continue your stuff. Because base is a long-held Lagos Island culture. People are always hanging out outside on the street, and they call it base. That's number one. Number two, we realize that people are always buying water in that neighborhood. And for some luck, which I don't know where that luck came from, our water is pure water, like you can drink it.
Wow.
So what we now did was that we now created a borehole outside of our fence where the community can also fetch water. So now, is that art? Is that the work of art? It doesn't matter for me. We're not an art space. We are a citizen.
Yeah. Wow. That's it's very exciting, very interesting. How it serves the community. And I feel like even just it's easy to think about what that means when you live outside of Nigeria. When an art gallery or a traditional art institution says, we're going to be for the community, and they say we'll meet this need, not even meeting needs, but we're going to be here, a space that people can come in. But to imagine what that is in Lagos, in Lagos Island is, I guess, it's always very different depending on where you go. But I feel like this is going to open something very beautiful when you think of, let's say, Lagos now. Coming back, there was Afropolis 2024. There were these big major festivals. There's other things happening. And sometimes it feels like our art spaces leans towards visual art. That's where the art currency is of a certain class. It happens this time of the year in specific places to bring specific people. It's commercial. And I think it got me thinking, just seeing that, like, okay, but this cannot be all. It caters to one thing, but there's all of these things happening on the grassroots level. There's all of this creative, what's the English? People are making things that can solve problems. And it's like we're just completely blind to that fact, and we just focus on this thing. So you now explaining what the QDance Center is, as well as other things, it's like, yes, this is kind of what we need. This is how we get people the access, thing of access, but that is not just in creating a space like a physical building, but what you do even after that. Access and then accessibility, what you do after that.
So for me, because number one, because I think one thing I've been able to do since my practice, since Afro-Parisian Network, when I started becoming aware of the community more, I have over time turned community engagement. In fact, I changed the name at some point in my in my journey. I started calling it social engineering. And because it's not just about engaging, no, it is composing, and it is programming. How do you program how do you program your way through a problem? How do you engineer your way into into forging different kind of relationality and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Because you might say you are doing community engagement, but are you really creating relationships?
That's the thing.
Are you, because I'm not a solutionist. I don't look for solutionist solutions. No, I'm not interested in it. I can go there and romanticize my way and say, oh, we're going to do community engagement, we're going to blah, blah, blah. Like, no. Just like I show up anywhere, I show up in France or in US or in Japan or in Greece or in South Africa. I'm not coming here pretending that I have solution to whatever problems. I don't. I don't, and I'm not going to kid you. That's why I don't apply for funding a lot, because the language of funding requires you to lie, really. And I think, not like I cannot lie if I want, but there's something disturbing about promise. I cannot promise you anything, but I can do my best. But I cannot promise you anything, because I have never been so clear about an outcome when I've not made the journey. I do not know what I'm going to encounter in Lagos Island. I do not know. Maybe my personal temperament or my personal arrogance is not going to allow me fit into that community. Maybe they're going to see us as elitists and people who have just come to buy off stuff because we have money, and maybe so. And I'm open to all of that, because that is where relationships are formed. Relationship is about, you will first clash. Yes, you need to clash. You need to. I'm not pretentious about it. When they bring fight, I will give them fight back. Forget it. When they want to drop our generator and you're saying you cannot drop a generator because we are area boys, you will pay. I'm Nora I'm not pretentious like that. I was born and brought up in Surulere. I'm also a mainland boy. So that I make all this leap, I connect with governors, with kings, does not mean I've lost my common touch. No. If it's time to fight, we go off shirts, we go fight. Like, I don't want to pretend that there's something high about what we're doing. No. We struggled, we fought, we worked our ass off to be where we are. But because of that is also the reason why we can connect. It's the only reason why I can tell one woman selling whatever in Lagos Island whose son or daughter likes dance, and I can say, I can't promise your son anything, but let the son come to Q school. At least we can give you free education because you are a man. You can come, and then this is what I know I can do. Whatever else I cannot do, I can't promise your son now that when he finishes school, he will automatically enter QDance company. No, that one I cannot. Because then we need to see him. He needs to understand that it's not a given. Again, welfareist. I don't like welfareist approach to things. And this is what white people do in Africa. Oh, poor Africans, we bring funding. We don't know anything about their problems. We just think money will solve it. No, money has not solved Africa's problem. Billions have been pumped into this country since the 70s. Nothing has been solved through money alone. So there need to be relationships. There need to be relationality, where they don't see me as anything other than a brother. A brother who sometimes you ask for help, you be like, bro, lower ye, mo broke. I'm not broke. So she might get rice. Okay, I got rice, But there is not, like I say, that's why I don't collect money from people. I don't collect NGOs money that will now make me start doing something by force, by fire. I can't deal. That we no one person's one kobo is in that building. It's all our own sweat and blood that we use to build it. And that is how we have started since we moved back to Nigeria. But for some reason, we are achieving little wins here and there. It might not be as grand as one may hope, but we are making changes in people's lives, not only in Lagos, also in the whole of Nigeria. also on the continent of Africa, also in the Caribbean, also in the Americas. We can see the effect of what our work is doing, the echo that is coming back to us at least. We say, oh, really? It makes you feel that way. Oh, we give thanks to God. Oh, it makes you feel that way. Oh, that means we are encouraged to continue to do what we are doing the way we're doing it. But we're not doing it for that reason. We're doing it because it's our own personal conviction.
Yeah. And we need more of that. So more of that in Lagos, more of that in Nigeria. People finding how they fit, and then that having that service oriented attitude to the community. Me, I'm always excited. Anything that I hear QDance, Police, anything like this, but I'm always excited to see. But I have one last question, which is like two questions in one. I knew that I wanted to call this episode Restoration because I feel like your journey back to Nigeria kind of represents that, not for you, but for what Lagos can be because of your experience and expertise, and for others who will make this return to kind of to think of their place. Not that it's not happening with people in Nigeria, but to say that you realize that you have this sort of mindset and position that is geared now towards people outside of yourself. It's not something we see very often. But I wanted to ask, what does a creative reawakening look like in Lagos? And what's Lagos ready for now that it wasn't ready for a few years ago?
Interesting. I think a creative reawakening in our own terms will be a sort of cultural renaissance, which interestingly we are experiencing now, especially through Yoruba culture. Yoruba culture is attaining, or at least we can see signs of it, attaining a sort of rematuration. Is getting to a level of maturity again, where it is beginning to be aware of its force, of its power, of itself. If you go around Lagos now, you will see a lot of billboards in Yoruba language, not just in only Yoruba language, with the Ami, with the Omo, One will call itself Tutuola, and it's actually a real estate company. One will call itself Isimi. Isimi is actually an hospitality space. One will call itself Dukia. Dukia is actually selling properties. Well, and the way they write it, they actually put all the Omo and the Ami on them. It's as simple as that, but it's new to me, and not to me alone. That is to say, now we can start getting comfortable of who we are and our own culture and our identity. That, for me, is something that I have been pushing since I was in France. Where I was really pushing at Yoruba culture, Yoruba philosophy, Yoruba worldview as the central point to every subject matter I am pushing out there. The subject matter might be about trauma, it might be about memory, it might be about history, it might be about exile, it might be about, I don't know, about what else did I do? About reincarnation, whatever, about migration. But I'm always saying to them that the Yoruba people have already thought about these things. The current one I'm working on now is about climate change. Yoruba people have already thought about these things, like long ago. If we are actually just, humble enough to come back, in a way of speaking, to re-centralize ourselves, to calm ourselves down and listen anew and afresh. And to re-engage our archives, and to re-engage our intelligences, and to really re-engage our knowledge systems, and to re-engage our own history. There's something fresh for every creative. We are seeing musicians are doing it a lot. In Afrobeat, there will be no Afrobeat without what I just said. Fashion. Ankara, sorry, I said Ankara. Ashoke is coming back in vogue. Adire is back in vogue, and not just by people at the margin, like fashion shows. Everybody is focusing on those materiality now. Music, I've thought about music. Films, All the films on Netflix and Prime, everybody is going back to the original script. Dance is the same. Architecture. Now, there's something interesting also happening. There are 3 different cultural buildings currently that, for some reason, they all have the same colors. You see what I'm saying? Kunle Afolayan space in Oyo, the same muddy, brown, the same as Yoruba, Randle Centre, the same with Qudance Centre as well. So even architect and Kunle's own, for me, is actually one of the most interesting ones, because what Theo Lawson did with that space, Theo and Kunle for sure. Kunle has a very keen eye for design as well. And what they've done, you will go and see it. It's Yoruba aesthetics to the fullest. They use fractals in the design of the houses. They use pillars that are forms of carvings that they use for the pillars. I know. Well, what they did in that space, I'm like, okay, you took it to another level. So design, fashion, architecture, music, dance, film, everybody is now beginning to be interested in indigenous culture as base, as the base for starting point. And that in itself is what reawakening looks like to me. It's already happening. It's already happening. And these 3 spaces that I also mentioned, there might be more coming. MOA can be one of them as well. But I'm yet to see MOA, because the aesthetics and the approach MOA is using is different from these other 3 that I mentioned. MOA is the Museum of West African Art. Already, museum is a problematic word. West African art is another problematic word. Then when you look at the funding structure currently, it's completely Western. So I'm tempted to not think of it as part of what I'm talking about, because what I'm talking about, they are all 100% indigenous. Yoruba Center for Art and Randle Centre for Yoruba Culture and History, QDance Center, Cap Village, Kunle Afolayan Productions Film Village. These are spaces that are beginning to think about alternatives and other ways of doing in our own form, in our own eyes, in our own understanding. It might be not glossy in the beginning. It might be a lot of fight with politicians, a lot of fight on what direction it should go, what direction it should not go, a lot of fight to see how we can keep it standing. But I love efforts like that is 100% indigenous effort. It can only grow from there. But when you go and borrow other people's efforts, you will not know how to develop it further than what you've been given.
Well, okay, that's a nice way to kind of end. Qudus, thank you for your time, because I know that you're very busy.
Finally, we made it up.
There are a lot of things going on. We really have Thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing all of this.
Thank you.
It's very interesting for me to know, and I guess when people listen to, they'll be very interested in your journey and seeing, even thinking about themselves too, and how we can continue to make Lagos, Nigeria, Africa better. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Everybody,
much.
bye for now. Yes.
Thank you. Let me also say my own thank you now before you close it. Thank you very much, Shayo, for inviting me to your podcast. I know that it's not been easy to finally get to this point of doing it, but I'm always excited having conversations with you. You are one of those few young people that I'm always excited talking to, because I feel like there's some level of connection in there, and I hope we'll get to still do more things together in the future.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for your kind words. And me, I'm looking forward to it. To any collaboration. Me, I'm already down. I've told you. But everyone, bye for now, and stay tuned for whatever might come up next.
Them no say we come night and day. Sister pave the way, so I no hesitate. Brother tell me say, make I no come exclaim, cause this gist it day, yes, this gist it day.